Officer of the Kenya Bankers Association to speak on behalf of that sector.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to present the commitments from the private sector. And the first commitment, which is in the immediate term, is the fact that the private sector was heavily involved in the enactment of the Bribery Act. And now we commit to expedite the development of the regulations that will aid in the full implementation of this act. In the short term, we commit to aid in fast-tracking the enactment of the Whistleblower Protection Bill. In the medium term, we commit to prepare an anti-corruption policy that will be adopted by the signatories to the Code of Ethics for Business in Kenya. This is a code that has been adopted by members of the private sector, and it will be implemented in collaboration with the UN Global Compact. Similarly, in the medium term, we also commit to establish a public register that will be showing all the beneficial ownership of companies to introduce some transparency in the process. And we also, in the medium term, commit to establish a corruption reference bureau. This is one that will work in exactly the same way that the Credit Reference Bureau works, where a credit provider can access information on an entity that it's intending to deal with and establish the credit profile of the borrower, in which case, in this case, an entity will be able to establish the corruption profile of the entity that it intends to deal with. And finally, we commit to support an amendment to the law to bring lawyers as reporting entities to the Financial Reporting Center within the framework of the anti-money laundering and countering financing of terrorism. As they say, the chain is as strong as the weakest link. This has been the weakest link, and we need to seal it. Thank you.
Thank you, Habil. The next one is one that I think, again, all of us are very familiar with, which is a civil society sector, or what's called CSOs. In this case, represented by Samuel Kimeo, who's the Executive Director of Transparency International. When you speak about corruption, he's right at home. Not because you're corrupt, but because you fight it. Karibu.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I present on behalf of civil society organizations, and we commit to adopt a public benefits organization service charter that is going to help us improve and instill best standards in the sector. We are aware that there is need for the PBO Act to be operationalized to enable us to do this. We will do civic and political education for the public to reject officials implicated in corruption, while mobilizing communities in reclaiming grabbed public spaces. And in this, Your Excellencies, we recognize that in terms of leadership, the ethical standard is what applies. The public discourse today seems to be that people are innocent until they are proven guilty. And we want to posit that standard is for purposes of punishment and not for purposes of leadership. Leadership is a trust. In terms of reclaiming grabbed spaces, Your Excellency has ordered the titling of schools, and a lot of work has gone into this. We want to support this work to completion and to extend it to reclaim all other spaces that have been taken up by corrupt people. And lastly, we will name and shame people involved in corruption and mobilize the public to boycott products or businesses associated with the corrupt. And in doing this, as well as in reclaiming our spaces, we are simply taking away the proceeds and the fruits of corruption, which is essential in putting an end to corruption. Finally, Corruption, as defined by Transparency International, is the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. And we know that this takes mainly through the public space, and we will work with all sectors to make sure that we get rid of the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. Thank you.
Pole, I hope everyone is okay. Next is the women's sector, which is mentioned quite a bit. And in this case, we're going to hear from Stella Agara. Stella Agara is the AU ambassador, an anti-corruption advisor, and the Emerging Leaders Foundation of Kenya. The longest business card I have seen so far. Karibu.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Stella Agara, as you have been told, the AU Youth Ambassador for Anti-Corruption in East Africa and affiliated with the Emerging Leaders Foundation. I'll be presenting the sector commitments for women who were represented or constituted of Crown Trust, which is also the Secretariat for the National Women's Steering Committee that has representatives in this crowd from 40 counties. The Kenya Association of Women Business Owners,